What do you say when your child looks at you with tears welling up in their eyes and asks, if God is good, why did this happen? It's a heart-stopping moment because above all else, you want your child to have peace and security in God. Maybe it's not a child asking, maybe it's you. You look at the world, or you just look at your own life and the pieces are not fitting together. A diagnosis comes out of left field, a betrayal that shatters your trust, a world that seems to be groaning under the weight of injustice. It just doesn't make sense. And in the middle of all that confusion, God can feel a million miles away. He can feel silent and distant, and maybe even like it doesn't even care. If you're feeling this way, you are not alone. Believe me, when I've stood in the exact place you are wrestling with those same questions, I think every person, if they're being honest, has moments where God is hard to see. But what if the most powerful way through that pain isn't a neat, tidy explanation? What if the answer isn't a formula, but a simple psalm, a prayer hidden in plain sight, written thousands of years ago by someone who felt the same exact way that we do? There is a path forward when faith gets tested. And today we are going to find out together one of the most raw, honest passages in the Bible. It is Psalm 10. Before we go any further into Psalm 10, we have to start here. It is absolutely okay to ask God the hard questions. So many of us carry that quiet fear that our doubt and anger will somehow disqualify us from God's love. We think real faith means never crying out, never admitting that we're hurting. But the Bible shows us something completely different. In fact, the book of Psalms, the prayer and songbook of the Bible, is filled with men who were getting brutally honest with God. And I will walk alongside you and help you as you seek to know God and disciple your middle schooler. I've been helping women and children in the local church for 3 decades. And in Psalm 10, King David is believed to have written this psalm. It is an unfiltered, raw prayer. This was a man who was labeled after God's own heart, bursting with frustration in this psalm and desperation for answers. He didn't pretend. He didn't put on a brave face. He brought his whole broken, confused heart to God in prayer. And that's exactly where Psalm 10 kicks off. The very first of this says, why, Lord, do you stand so far off? Why in times of trouble are you so far away? Let that sink in. That isn't just a polite question. It is an accusation because his heart felt abandoned. David basically is saying, God, where are you? The world is on fire. I am falling apart and you cannot be found. You are distant. You are silent. Have you ever felt like that? Even prayed like that? Every word was just hitting the ceiling? Have you looked at the devastation around you, the situations, and God, if you are good, how can you let this happen? If you have heard this verse, it is a gift and it is permission to ask why. Asking why is not failing. It is faith. It is a real relationship. You only ask why of someone you actually expect to answer and get an answer from. You only cry in the darkness deep down when you believe someone is there to hear you. The feeling that God is distant in times of trouble is universal. It is a human experience. It doesn't make you a bad Christian. It makes you human. And it puts you in a long line of faith of saints who wrestled, who have lamented, who have clung to God even when they couldn't feel him. So if you're in a place right now, deep breath, you are standing on holy ground. The Bible gets your struggle, and God is not afraid of your question. He invites you to bring them. If helping your middle schooler turn to God is something that you want to do, go ahead and hit the like button. It also helps other moms find help they need right here. And for a powerful, hands-on way you can experience the victory of God with your middle schooler, starting even tonight, I've put a link in the description for the Joshua Bible study. It is a 50-day journey through the book of Joshua that you and your middle schooler can do together. You can even start it tonight. In Psalm 10, once David gives voice to that core feeling, that sense of divine abandoning, he doesn't stop. For the next 10 verses, he does something that might make us a little uncomfortable. He stops talking to God for a moment and starts describing in painstaking detail the problem he sees all around him. He stares directly into the abyss of human weakness and he doesn't blink. This section is so important because it validates what we often tell ourselves. We're not crazy for seeing the darkness in the world. The Bible sees it too. Let's walk through what David sees because it sounds chillingly familiar. First, he describes the arrogance of the wicked. In verse 2, he says, in his arrogance, the wicked man hunts down the weak. Then in verses 3 and 4, he says, the wicked boast of the cravings of their heart. And in his pride, he does not seek God. In in all his thoughts, there is no room for God. Think about that. The psalmist is looking at the people who are succeeding because of their wickedness. They are proud, there is greed, and at the core, there is a practical atheism. They live as if God is dead. They prosper at all times. They see God totally as irrelevant, and they sneer at anyone who gets in their way. Does that sound familiar? We see it in the news, in our workplace, in public figures who seem to build empires of selfishness. They get ahead, they win, and we look on just like David. How is this possible? Why aren't they being accountable? It is a deep-seated cry for justice because you want your child to live by what is true, not what is popular. And this world seems to reward the opposite. It feels fundamentally unfair. And silence from heaven can be deafening. But David goes deeper. It's not just arrogance. He describes their predatory nature. This is where the psalm gets truly chilling. From verses 7 to 10, David paints this picture of the predator lurking in the shadows, saying their mouths are full of lies and threats of trouble and evil are under their tongue. Then he uses this terrifying analogy. He lies in wait near the villages. From ambush, he murders the innocent. His eyes watch for secret victims. In cover, he lies. He catches the helpless and drags them off in his net. This isn't just someone who is passively bad. This is a calculated predator of evil that targets innocent and helpless. These are people with no one to defend them. The fatherless, the poor, the marginalized, the wicked person David describes is a bully who specifically seeks out the ones who can't fight back, crush the victim who collapse and fall under the strength. And this is the stuff that is so hard to recognize. Where is God? The senseless violence, the abuse of the powerless, the suffering of children. I'm going to be linking some more Psalms at the end of this video. I invite you to walk through the book of Psalms with us. We are seeing exactly how God uses the book of Psalms to help us today in our everyday battle. And I know that you want your middle schooler to know God, a personal relationship with God. Both you and you want to disciple your middle schooler. Walk through the book of Psalms with us. I'll link it at the end. In the book of Psalms, we see our hearts break and we question why. David is right there with us, putting words to the horror we feel. He is acknowledging the brutal reality. There are lions in the world and they prey on the vulnerable. Finally, after describing their arrogance and their actions, David reveals the ultimate soul-crushing lie that fuels it all. In verse 11, he quotes the inner monologue of the wicked. He says, the wicked say to themselves, God will never notice. He covers his face, never see us. This is the taunt of evil. This is the whisper of the enemy in every moment of suffering. You're alone. You're forgotten. The one who is supposed to protect you has turned his face. He doesn't see your pain. He doesn't care. And that lie is terrifying, especially as a parent, because you want your child to know they are never alone. And this is the lie that can feel so true when you're in the depths. When the diagnosis comes, when the grief is overwhelming, when the injustice is unbearable, this thought can settle in our hearts, suffocating. God has forgotten me. For 11 verses, David has given us a brutally honest diagnosis of the world. He's validated our deepest fears and frustrations. And he's saying, I see it too. The arrogance, the coming after of the innocent, the feeling that God is absent. He hasn't offered one easy answer. He has simply sat with us in the darkness. And in doing so, he prepares us for one of the most powerful pivots of all scripture, the choice to believe. After that long, agonizing descent into the reality of evil, but something remarkable happens. The entire tone of the psalm shifts. No angel appears with a scroll explaining the problem. Instead, David makes a choice. It's a conscious, deliberate act of his will. He has spent 11 verses describing his reality. Now he's going to spend the rest of the psalm declaring greater reality. This is the secret of Psalm 10. The key to enduring seasons when life doesn't make sense isn't about getting an explanation from God. It's about making a declaration to God about who he is, even when the circumstances scream the opposite. The pivot happens in verse 12. Listen, arise, Lord, lift up your hand. Do not forget the helpless. This is not a whimper. This is a battle cry, an appeal to God, knowing God is there, even if he feels distant. Arise, O Lord. It's a military command when the Ark of the Covenant of God came in, when the presence was carried into battle. It's David saying, God, I am calling you to the front front lines of my pain. Engage, show your power. He's moving from lament to direct petition, choosing to act in faith. This is the kind of resilience, faith you want your middle schooler to have when they face challenges, confidence in God. And if you want a hands-on Bible study that you can do at your kitchen table with your middle schooler that will definitely show them how to think differently about their struggles, get the Joshua Bible study. I have linked it in the show notes. It's a 50-day step-by-step walk through the book of Joshua. You can start even tonight with your middle schooler. At the end of Psalm 10, David starts preaching to himself, countering the lies of the wicked with the truth of God's character. In verse 14 comes the thunder answer. It's one of the most beautiful verses in scriptures. But you, God, do see. You consider the trouble, the grief. Take in hand. The victim commits himself to you, the helper of the fatherless. Look at that direct contrast. The wicked man says, God never sees, but David declares, but you, God, do. This is the battlefield of faith, choosing God's truth over the evidence of my pain, of David's pain. David affirms the critical things. First, God sees. God is not blind to the suffering. Second, he not only sees, but he considers it. The Hebrew word implies deep empathy, empathetic attention. Your grief is not insignificant to God. And third, God takes the trouble in hand. He is not a passive observer. He is an active participant who takes our cause upon himself. He is our helper. He is the helper of the fatherless, the defender of those who have no one else. David is building his case, reminding himself of who God is. Then in verse 15, he asks God to break the arm of the wicked and evil man. Call him into account for his wickedness. He is asking God for the justice the world so desperately needs, because you want your child's life to be shaped by reverence for God and not by the fear of man. And this crescendo of faith culminates in the ultimate declaration in verse 16. The Lord is king forever and ever. This is the principle David started with, a world that felt chaotic and unjust. Now he has lifted his eyes from his temporary reality to the eternal one. No matter who sits on the earthly thrones, no matter which bully seems to be in charge, there is one true king. His reign is not for a season, it is forever. God has the final word. If you want coming to you on a regular basis to help you know God deeply and disciple your middle schooler faithfully, be sure to hit the subscribe button. This Psalm 10 ends with a beautiful summary of this newfound confidence. Verse 17 and 18 are the promise for every person who has ever felt helpless. You, Lord, hear the desire of the afflicted. You encourage them and listen to their cry, defending the fatherless and the oppressed, so that mere mortals from the earth will no longer strike terror. He started with the cry of abandonment. He faced the darkness of the world, and David concluded by choosing to trust in God's character and the eternal King who will bring justice. He didn't get the answer to his why, but he found the footing of his who. And when he did that, he found peace, not from understanding the circumstances, but from trusting the character of God. So let's go back to where we started. The quiet room, your child looking up with tears in their eyes, their heart aching, or maybe it's you, alone in the middle of the night, asking the same question. What do you do? Psalm 10 doesn't give us a simple formula to explain suffering. And thank God it doesn't, because any simple answer would feel cheap in the face of real pain. Instead, it gives us something far more valuable, a way to walk through the confusion without losing our faith. So when your child asks, why do bad things happen? You can kneel down, look them in the eye, and start with the truth. First, you validate the question and the feeling. Say that in such an important question, and it's okay to feel sad and confused. It really hurts when bad things happen, and it doesn't feel fair. We can teach our kids and remind ourselves that God is not scared of our feelings. You can say, A hero in the Bible named King David asked God the very same thing. He once prayed, God, why do you feel so far away? This immediately tells them their feelings are normal, even biblical. The second thing you can do is acknowledge the reality of the brokenness. We don't have to pretend the world is perfect. We can be honest. Yes, there is badness. There is sadness. It's a world of people, and people sometimes can be very wrong and make wrong choices that hurts others. The Bible is honest about this. It sees the bullies and the pain, and just like we do, this mirrors the first half of Psalm 10. We teach our middle schooler that faith isn't about denying reality. It's about knowing there is a deeper, true reality. And the third thing is the pivot that can make the choice to remember who God is. This is the core answer. You can say, but even when we see all this sad stuff, David teaches us to do something very powerful. He chooses to remember what is true about God, even when it didn't feel true. And we can do that too. This is where you can lead your middle schooler because you want your middle schooler to value wisdom more than quick success. And this is the truest wisdom there is. This is where you can use the truths from Psalm 10 as an anchor for their heart and your own. And you, even when it feels like God isn't looking, we choose to believe Psalm 10, verse 14. But you, God, do see. He sees you right now. He sees your tears. He sees the person who is hurting, and God cares. You can say, even when people feel all alone, we choose to believe that God, the helper of the fatherless, He is a special protector for those who feel like they have no one else. And most important, even when it looks like the bad guys are winning, we choose to believe Psalm 10, verse 16. The Lord is king forever and ever. He really is king. He is in charge, and He promises that one day He's going to come and make everything right. One day there will be no more sadness for those who believe in Him, who trust in Him, who put their faith in Him. There will be no more tears and no more bad things. He will have the final word, and it will be a good one. This isn't an explanation for why the bad thing happened. It is a declaration of who is in control when bad things happen. It shifts our focus from the problem that we can't solve to the person we can trust. And Mom, it helps us teach our middle schooler that they don't have to understand everything. They just need to understand God's character. Look, life isn't always going to make sense. There will be seasons of profound confusion, of grief we can't comprehend, and questions that may not find answers this side of eternity. We will see things that make God feel distant and silent. But Psalm 10 gives us a lifeline. It teaches us the lament is holy language. It gives us permission to cry, "Why, Lord?" It validates our experience of a world that is clearly not as it should be. But it does not leave us there. It calls us to make a choice to lift our eyes from our hurt, our circumstances, and fix them on the constancy of our King. It's that choice that you want for your middle schooler, their whole life to stand firm when others go the wrong way. It's a choice to believe when all the evidence seems to be contrary, knowing that God sees, that God cares, that God takes their grief in his hand. He always will be king forever and ever. Your faith isn't measured by the absence of questions, but by where you take them. The answer to what we do when life doesn't make sense is this: we do what David did. We lament honestly, and then we trust fiercely. We acknowledge the darkness, and then we declare that he is the light. We may not get an explanation, but we can find our anchor in who God is. And if this message has encouraged you today, whatever season you're in, please think of someone you know who might be walking through a confusing time and share this with them. You never know how much a word of hope might mean to someone who feels so alone. It is my pleasure to walk this journey with you as you know God deeply and teach your tween faithfully.